Hello. I'm the worm inside RFK Jr.'s brain. Well, worm, as you can see, I'm actually a giant hot dog. Mainstream media lied to you again. What did CNN and MSNBC tell you I was a worm? No, I'm a giant hot dog. So get facts straight. And you may say, how could a hot dog fit inside someone's head? Well, remember, he's a Kennedy. They have huge heads. Just ask Lee Harvey Oswald. Said it was like trying to shoot a beach ball. By the way, if JFK is too soon, this is going to get pretty rough pretty quick. It's like 60 years ago. Most of you weren't born. No, I'm not just a hot dog because the guy playing me asked his friends who had a worm costume and this is the closest thing he could find. That is not why. I'm really a hot dog. Could I have bought a worm costume? Sure, but that'd be like $30 and that's a majority of my pay, so I wasn't going to commit to the bit like that. All right, so I'm a hot dog inside RFK's brain. That's the reality I'm presenting to you. And you'll notice I do have the same voice as RFK, which is why I sound like a frog halfway through transitioning into a prince. Which I am against trans frog surgeries. You're born either a frog or a prince. I also sound like a mix of Katharine Hepburn and the B-52s. Listen to me, mister, you're my knight in shining armor. Tin roof. The golden pond is a little low. Okay. Well, I can't believe a majority of you got a B-52 and Katharine Hepburn reference. That's how I know at the Paper Machete. Try that at Zany's. They're like, what? Now I'm going to give you all a little presentation on what I'm going to do for health services for people, worms, and hot dogs inside brains. And I have these whiteboards the guy playing me was willing to pay for since they're so cheap at Staples. Which is why. My first policy is cheap whiteboards at Staples. It's a health policy. Why? Because as you can see, if you're a financially strapped comedian doing a 6 to 8 minute humorous piece with quick turnaround, you need cheap whiteboards. It lowers your stress, as you can see by this chart at the bottom. Okay. So that's health policy number 1. Number 2, oh yeah, that's right. Killing bears lowers your chance of getting gonorrhea by 30%. Now, for those who don't know, since I control RFK Jr. much like Plankton did during that episode of SpongeBob SquarePants from season 1. Yep. On Golden Pond and SpongeBob Deep Cuts, those are the references that will be flying hard and fast at you today. Okay. Anyhow, RFK Jr., I got him to kill a bear and throw its carcass at Central Park. But before he'd done that, he got gonorrhea 3 times, as you can see by this bear waving, being like, hey, I'm going to give you gonorrhea. And then 0 times after he killed a bear. And the reason it's 30% is because it's a 3 and a 0. That's math and science to me, the head of Health and Human Services. Aren't you all glad I'm in charge? Okay, next health policy. Oh yeah, that's right. Number 3, vaccines are gay. Learned that from Joe Rogan as well as several doctors on Reddit. Because if you give a kid a vaccine, he'll have autism for a day. Teach a kid a vaccine, he'll have autism for his whole life. You all know that Jesus quote. And we all know you don't want your kid to get a vaccine and get autism because that's way worse than polio. Yeah, polio kills kids, but autism makes them weird like me. Which brings me to my next point, by the way. All right. No more weird kids who end up like RFK Jr. That's health policy number 4. You don't want your kids to end up... These all 3 were Google searches for incel, by the way. So that's what popped up, and it was like so accurate. I was like, this will work. You have your kids end up all hot dog brained and jacked. And, speaking of kids you don't want to end like autism, as we all know, like I said, way worse than polio. Wouldn't you rather have your kids not walk and die at the age of 10 than struggle to make eye contact? Doesn't that sound better? Than end up like the guy whose brain I'm inside of? I've seen the inside of RFK Jr.'s brain. It's not pretty. Looks like a haunted house, just cobwebs and unused chandeliers. You ever notice like a haunted house, there's always unused chandeliers? You ever notice that? It's like, you ever seen the house on Haunted Hill, or Haunting of Hill House on Netflix? You guys ever seen that? It's pretty good. Okay. Okay, and here's the thing. If a bunch of kids get autism from vaccines, that's way more people who are going to try and do stand-up comedy, and we don't need that, so. Don't need any more Tony Hinchcliffes. Or from my perspective, we do. But imagine FDR if he had autism instead of polio. He seemed courageous because of that disability, but if he had had autism, all it would have done would have made his fireside chats hilarious. He'd have had a fun tag after all his quotes, like, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself and spiders." Those things are weird. And then he got on a huge riff that would have crushed, and it wouldn't have reassured us after Pearl Harbor against the dirty Japanese. I'm a Trump cabinet member. I had to do one thing racist. Which, that reminds me. I don't think, this is just physical. I think we need to bathe the Japanese. I think as a group, and I don't know why, just every time I see a Japanese person, they remind me of that character Pigpen from that cartoon, Garfield. Yeah. Which reminds me, my sixth policy, Garfield is Charlie Brown. It's my final health policy. More importantly, it's a huge health risk to think Charlie Brown is not actually the cat Garfield. By the way, did I need to make it sexy Garfield? No, but I did anyway. All right, but you wouldn't know. You don't want to know what happens. If you don't think Garfield is the same as Charlie Brown, then to quote Claudio's speech about the unknowns of death in Shakespeare's Measure for Measure, "'Tis too horrible, the weariest and most loathed worldly life that age, ache, penury, and imprisonment can lay on nature is a paradise. To what we fear of thinking Charlie Brown isn't Garfield." Shakespeare hit the least of all the references. Go back to Katharine Hepburn and SpongeBob, my bad. But if you don't think Garfield's a 5-year-old bald child, you're in for a world of hurt. Hypertension, type 3 diabetes. And don't ask me why. No one ever has. That's why I believe these things. I've lived an unquestioned life as a hot dog inside a Kennedy brain. So don't question me on anything, especially if you're a woman. I'm a Kennedy. You think I was going to be respectful to a woman? It's not exactly our thing. All right. There's a bit about Puerto Rico in here I'm going to skip. Anyhow, I hope I've reassured you all. And remember, the next time a pandemic hits, I'll be here to help. Isn't that such a comforting thought? A guy with a hot dog worm brain who thinks vaccines are gay and Charlie Brown is sexy Garfield will be protecting you. I'd say God bless America, but God's now part of the deep state. I learned that from a guy on YouTube. All right, we're all doomed. Thank you very much.
The worm that ate RFK Jr.'s brain was written and played with a machete by the hilarious, the stalwart, the really sexier than Garfield, Joe